If you're a health of a life coach who's interested in manifestation, then this is the episode of the show for you. I'm going to share what my processes look like, the things that I've manifested, and how it all works in my coaching business. Let's dive in. Hi there, welcome to the Wholehearted Business Show. I'm Laura. I help health and life coaches get more clients, grow their businesses, and live the best lives while they do it. And today on the show, we're talking all about manifestation. So this is a really interesting topic and something that I get really excited about. I really love talking about all things kind of spiritual and woo. And obviously manifestation as a concept is something that is really broken into the mainstream. You know, when I became a coach in kind of like the first few years of that, I think even going back to like 2014, 2015, you know, it was a thing that I was becoming aware of. It's been something that I've worked with for a long time with varying degrees of success. And I'll talk a little bit about what that has looked like as well. So if you're interested in the whole concept of manifestation, I'm going to kind of share my own process around this, what it's looked like for me, the tools that have really helped me, the places that I go for this kind of support around this kind of work. So do check all of those links out. I'll be sharing lots and lots of different things, like I say, as well as my process. So what is manifestation? Well, there's obviously a lot of different definitions out there. For me, manifestation is about how we can align our feelings, thoughts, actions, subconscious mind, lots of other things, so that we can bring in more of what we want into our reality, into our lived experience. There's obviously a big spiritual component to this, and often we're working with the universe, we're working with other energies. And again, there's lots of different definitions. That's how I relate to it. But ultimately, it is about doing something that helps you bring more of what you want into your life. It's about changing your lived experience, changing your reality. And that's really exciting. Like, who doesn't want to feel more empowered and like they have more control, more ability to get involved in that process? And I think what the wonderful thing about manifestation is that it gives us the tools to help navigate that and to be really proactive about it, but in a way that is really grounded in some spiritual practices as well. So that's how I relate to manifestation. Again, I'm not a manifestation teacher. There's lots of people who teach that. I'm going to talk a bit about some of those people in a second. But this is kind of how I relate to it. And this episode of the show really is about my personal relationship with manifestation and what that looks like for me, because there's plenty of people who can talk about the ins and outs of it. Lots of different people have got different approaches. But I wanted just to share a little bit about how I relate to it in my business and in my life as well. So whether you want to manifest more clients, more income, more work-life balance, you know, whatever it is that you want to manifest, there is a way that you can work with yourself, with energies to help you bring that into existence. And some of the best people that I've come across in terms of the people, the spaces, the processes that I find really, really helpful. The first one that I am part of at the moment that has been like, I don't often use this term, but it's personally for me, it's been completely life-changing, and that's to be magnetic, or TBM for short. So Lacey is the wonderful woman who runs that membership, and she's developed a signature process around manifestation that is very much rooted in working with your subconscious mind. And I really love everything about that process. I've been in the membership now for well over a year. I use the daily practices that she has in that membership like almost every day, and I'll talk a bit about how I use them. So I'm a massive fan of that. I will put the links in the description if anyone wants to go and check out To Be Magnetic. The podcast is really, really interesting as well. So that's my current favourite way to be supported around manifestation. Another favourite is Vicky from the Manifestation Collective. I've interviewed Vicky on the show. I'm going to link to that episode as well, so you can go and check that out. But Vicky's amazing. Go and check out Vicky's work on Instagram as well. Like, she's got books out about it. She's brilliant. So she's a really, really great down-to-earth source of information about manifestation, so go and check out Vicky. Other people that I've really enjoyed kind of finding out more about manifestation, this is kind of throwing it back to kind of like, you know, several years ago, but Abraham Hicks, if you look at YouTube for Abraham Hicks stuff, there'll be loads of stuff. Now, how, like, I think it's kind of like a slightly old-fashioned approach to manifestation, but that was definitely where I kind of first started to learn a bit more about that, and they talk about the vortex and all kinds of stuff like that. Gala Darling as well is another person who I've really liked the work that she's created around manifestation too. I've also recently really enjoyed hearing Dr. Tara Swart talk about manifestation as well from like a neural pathway kind of point of view. So there's a few podcasts that she's been on, and I know that she has supported the development of the practices in TBM as well. So she's someone I'm a really big fan of as well when it comes to manifestation. And of course there's the classic book, The Secret, Spirit, which is where a lot of people have been introduced to manifestation as well. So there's all these different sources, and I think it's really about finding something that kind of just resonates for you. And there's all sorts of different people teaching about manifestation in lots of different ways with lots of different approaches. And it is about finding something that just clicks for you. And that has been the case for me with TBM, is that has been the thing that's really like clicked in for me. But for some of you guys, it's going to be something completely different. So it's just finding the right people who are teaching it. It kind of just makes it like sink in for you. But TBM's been amazing for me, and like I say, all the others as well are definitely worth checking out too. So before I get into a bit more of like what my process looks like around manifestation, I wanted to just make note that obviously I am here talking as a white heterosexual woman in a country where I am not persecuted, in a relatively, from a relatively well-off background, like I've got all of those privileges that come with that. That is, I feel like it's very irresponsible to talk about manifestation without kind of recognising that that's my lived experience up to this point, and that does impact stuff. I think how all of this stuff works with manifestation is very, very individual. But for me, I just wanted to make sure that I'm really clear on that this isn't about kind of approaching manifestation without the lens of like, systemic oppression, things like that, because those things exist and those things are barriers and things that we have to tackle. So I just wanted to get that clear before I kind of go into the rest of it, because I think it's a really important part of the conversation to have before we start talking about manifesting magical things into our life. I think it's really important to recognise that that's a thing. So what has my experience of manifestation looked like? So like I say, I've been working with manifestation for a number of years. I've been doing vision boards for a long, long, long time. And although vision boards are not something that is taught in TBM, it's something that I still use. I love a vision board. I love a Pinterest board. I love that stuff. I'm a very, very visual person. I find that really, really helpful. But what it's looked like for me kind of over the last couple of years is about being really clear on what it is that I want to bring in, what I want to invite into my life. And in TBM, you're encouraged to create like mini and major manifestation lists. So the smaller things that kind of build what they call your trust muscle, in terms of, if you can attract in some of these smaller things, then it kind of builds your trust muscle for being able to attract in the bigger things as well. So some of the smaller things, some of the fun things that I've manifested in the last kind of couple of years, last few months, things like some running trainers that I really, really wanted at like a really discounted cost, which was amazing. Like the perfect dress that I wanted for a certain event. I manifested discounted microblading for my eyebrows because I didn't used to have very thick eyebrows, and I manifested that. So lots of like fun little things I've manifested. On the larger side, the biggest thing that I manifested, and the thing that I went into, I was actually looking back at my journaling from when I joined TBM back in kind of November 2023, I want to say. The biggest thing that I was working on manifesting back then was sustainable cash flow, was, more income in my business, all of that stuff. And that's something that has happened, as I've been talking about on the last couple of episodes of the show. So that's a big manifestation that has come through, has been that. So those are just some of the little things that have come about. And again, even just like on a day-to-day basis, there's all sorts of little fun things that kind of come in. And at the moment, I'm kind of in this space. At some point, I'll talk a bit more about some of the stuff that I've had going on a more personal like level. But I'm kind of like this space where I'm not quite ready to set the vision for what comes next. But I'm kind of in this space that feels like it's kind of like a cocoon, I feel like at the moment. So it's really interesting what I'm going to want to work on to manifest next, and actually to bring a bit more intention around some of those specific things again. But that's the kind of experience that I've had so far. And I've obviously manifested clients, I've manifested being fully booked out. Like those are other things that has been part of what I wanted to manifest. So what does the process look like? I want to share kind of a bit of a step-by-step process of the things that I'm thinking about when it comes to manifesting more of the things that I want into my life. The first step for me is always to get clear on what it is that I want to call in, but also how I want to feel when that thing comes in. And I've talked about this before a few times on the Wholehearted Business Show, but I'm a really big fan of a book called The Desire Map by Danielle Laporte. And she, in that book, talks about how when we want something, when we set a goal for ourselves, when we want to manifest something, ultimately what we want is the feeling that it gives us underneath. So for me, being really clear that, when I'm saying that I want a new client or I want to be fully booked, actually the feeling underneath that is of financial safety and security. So being really clear on the feelings that I want to experience when I think that I want something, has been so useful, because sometimes I don't necessarily need that exact thing, and it helps with detaching from that outcome, which is another thing I'm going to talk about in a second, knowing that there might be something else that could come through that would give me that feeling that I'm seeking, because ultimately I'm seeking a feeling rather than a specific thing. There's also a process inside TBM where they take you through discovering your authentic code, and what I found is that basically these things are really similar, like your core desired feelings, which is again what is taught in the desire map, your core values, your authentic code, they're very similar. So in TBM, what we're taught to do is to just ensure that what we're manifesting is actually in line with our authenticity. So there's a whole set of work in there around authenticity. So again, I'm always kind of rechecking in with what that looks like for me. What is my authentic code? What are my core desired feelings? And making sure that the things that I want to call in kind of make sense around that. I don't always write a list, but often I will do. And usually every mini season, again, I will link to the episode of the show where I talk about how I plan and map out my life and business in mini seasons. Each mini season, I will often kind of put some fun things in there in terms of, I'd love to manifest this experience, or I'd love to manifest this thing, and I will list those out in each mini season. So that's something that I'm in the habit of doing on that kind of level. So that's usually where I kind of get a bit more specific about what it is that I want to call in. But generally speaking, I think where I've gotten to as well is a bit of just kind of allowing stuff to come in, knowing that as long as I'm in the right kind of energetic space, the right things are going to come in, and kind of allowing that trust stuff to come in has been really interesting as well. So I will often kind of have a list of a couple of things, but generally speaking, I will also be able to just allow what needs to come in to come in. And as I've said before, I do love creating a vision board. I'm a massive fan of vision boards. I will often create a little mini vision board for each mini season, even if it's not necessarily a big thing around manifestation. I think it's just really fun to kind of set my energetic vibe for the season. It's really weird, but I'm such a visual person, it just feels really good fun to do that. And then once I've been through that process of kind of, either setting a list or just rechecking in with kind of my authentic code, my core desire feelings, all that kind of stuff, then it comes the kind of unblocking and unpacking and all of that kind of stuff. So again, in TBM, what we are taught in that program is that we manifest to the level of our self-worth. Now, that was the thing that was a really big kind of penny drop moment for me, because I've really struggled with self-worth over the years in lots of different areas of life and business. So kind of making that connection between, raising my self-worth and what I'm able to manifest and what I'm able to energetically hold. I've talked about this again on a recent episode where I talked a bit about the money mindset stuff and being able to energetically hold the things that you want, the money that you want to bring in, things like that. This kind of all ties into that, and ultimately we are going to manifest to the level of what we feel that we deserve and what our self-worth is going to allow us, and we will settle where we will settle, and we will attract in to the level of what our self-worth is. Obviously there's different ways that you can approach this. What we have in To Be Magnetic is they offer basically subconscious hypnosis style audio things. Best way to describe it. There's probably a much better way to describe it. But basically these kind of hypnosis meditations that you listen to, and they help you unpack some of your subconscious beliefs. Sometimes I just listen to them when I'm waking up on a morning. It's a really nice time for me to put stuff on and listen to, because I'm kind of not quite awake, not quite asleep. I feel like that's a really good time for me to listen to some of those things. But also when you journal on the back of what comes up, so there's specific kind of prompts that come up in those deep imaginings, they're called, and journaling on some of that has been the thing that has kind of really led to me having some massive profound moments of now I get this, now I can see why this is happening, now I can see why I behave like this, now I can see why I'm not attracting that thing in, now I can see why I've got this big fear around this thing. It just a lot of those deep imaginings have really helped the penny drop for me and helped me work through things, and I often have quite an emotional reaction when I listen to some of them as well. So that's been really helpful for me, is having that process there. But again, just having the understanding of how your subconscious mind and your self-worth kind of ties into manifestation, that has been the thing, I think, for me, that I didn't really find anywhere else in a substantial kind of way that I could really work with, that has made a massive difference for me with this. So that's been super useful. It's been having those tools and being able to understand the part of how self-worth comes into the equation as well. Another part of this high self-worth stuff is, it's not about being overconfident or arrogant. It's just about being kind of quietly confident, I think, is the best kind of version of how I would relate to that. It's a much more like deeply kind of rooted feeling of, again, you're valuing yourself. It is that kind of, I value myself so much. And that's been really profound. And I think kind of how that started to work out for me is things like the things that used to trigger me, now I see as an opportunity to get curious about why I'm being triggered rather than just being triggered. So in the past, and again, this is when it comes to business stuff, I have been massively triggered by feeling like really deep in comparison, feeling like that I'm not good enough, feeling like all of this kind of stuff. So now noticing when I do get triggered, it's like, okay, so what is at play here? Like, what is coming up? What is it about this situation or this person or what this thing that is causing me to have this reaction? Like, what buttons is it pressing? Kind of getting really curious about that. That's been really revelatory for me, is just to, instead of like reacting and feeling really terrible, is actually being curious about why I feel like that and unpacking that a little bit. That's been really, really helpful. Another thing that I've used around the high self-worth, it isn't just kind of like the deep imaginings that TBM offer, but it is a little bit of acting as if. Now, it's not kind of being delusional, but it is, when I've struggled, I've kind of asked myself, am I acting as someone who really values themselves, who has high self-worth? Like, am I behaving? Am I making decisions? Am I acting like someone who has that? And again, that is something that might not work for everybody, but for me, that's been really, really helpful to kind of break patterns of behaviour that I've had and to show up in different ways. It's been like, is this way of showing up the way that the highest version of myself, the highest version of Laura with really high self-worth is going to show up? And that has been a really lovely invitation for me to do things in a different way. So those are just a few of the things that I've done around the self-worth stuff and the subconscious unpacking stuff. So journaling, the TBM deep imaginings, acting as if, understanding that when I'm triggered, it's an invitation to get curious rather than just to freeze and feel terrible. So those key things have been really, really useful. Kind of just having that as part of the processes that I go through on a day-to-day basis has been really useful. Another part of my own manifestation process has been understanding how we need to feel like we can energetically hold the things that we want to manifest. This has been a really big thing for me to understand, to feel into, to embody, is this. Basically, if we don't feel safe to hold the manifestation that we want to bring in, it is really going to get stuck and it's just not going to want to come through. So this is definitely connected, I think, with the high self-worth stuff, but also there's a bit more of a practical element to this. So again, the example that always kind of comes up for me is, if you're wanting to manifest like a 6-figure business with 50 people in a group program, like, could you actually handle that? If that happened tomorrow, if all of a sudden you had 50 people in a group program and your business was turning over 100 grand, could you handle that? Would you feel safe, or would that freak you out? How would you actually handle that? You can want it. And again, this is the conversation that I've been having with myself. It's like, you can want that version as much as you want, but if that actually came in and you freak the fuck out, you're kind of already subconsciously blocking that from coming in. Your brain and your energetic field wants you to feel safe. It is not going to allow something to come in, if something intentionally that you want, if it's going to freak you out. So finding ways to get really comfortable with being able to hold the things that you want. And sometimes that just means that it's baby steps to get towards the place that you want to get to. Sometimes that's what that looks like. But just really knowing that you are energetically and practically ready to handle the things that you're going to manifest. Like, you will manifest up to the point that your nervous system can handle. I think that's another really big thing. Like, if your nervous system just can't handle it, like, you either manifest it and then lose it, or you just won't get it. So for me, understanding that part of that component of manifestation has been really helpful as well. The next step for me is around taking aligned action. So obviously we can want the things that we want, but if we aren't going to take action, they're not going to just magically fall into our lap. Sometimes things do, but generally speaking, we need to be taking aligned action. So again, in TBM, what they teach in that program is around listening for pings or feeling out for pings, which are basically like intuitive hits of, go to this place, do this thing, try this thing. And often that's our subconscious mind, our energetic field, the universe, however you want to relate to it, is kind of nudging us in the right direction. And sometimes getting used to, first of all, like tuning in for those hits, for those intuitive hits, and then taking action on them is a big part of this process. But also sometimes it is just looking at like the fact that, if you're wanting to manifest, 5 new clients, like, are you actually taking the action to do that? Like, are you actually meeting the universe halfway and actually doing some stuff that has the potential of those people coming in? Like, that's a really important thing. So let's just say in this example that you want to manifest 5 new clients in April or in May or whatever. Like, a good approach for this is like, would I be able to handle 5 clients? Would my nervous system be able to manage 5 clients? Would my admin processes, my business be able to onboard them, sustain them, manage them, all that kind of stuff? What subconscious blocks have I got around being able to manifest these clients? Like, what is the fear? Am I worried about being a good coach? Am I worried about getting people results? Like, what's all that kind of stuff going on? What's all of that stuff in my subconscious mind? You know, what action do I need to take? Like, this is just part of how you can start to pull apart those things that you want from this kind of manifestation energetic level to better help you actually bring those things into being as well. Another big part of the process for me has been being able to detach from the outcome. So again, this is another thing that's talked about quite a lot in manifestation circles, is when we attach from the outcome, when we stop like needing it so much, that's when often the thing kind of comes in. So this is really, really difficult because obviously like you want something for a reason. But what I find the best way to do this, and again, this is why understanding my authentic code and my core desire feelings has been really revolutionary for me, has been, it's not the thing. It's not the specific thing. It is difficult sometimes to like detach from that, but it's not the specific thing that I actually want. It's the feeling underneath that. It's the way that it adds to my self-identity. It's the, you know, it's all the other things that it creates once I get it. It's that I actually want. And there's other ways for that to come in. It's the feeling underneath. You know, if you want to get those 5 clients, what is it about getting those 5 clients? Is it about validating your abilities as a coach? Is it about the financial safety aspect? Like, what is it? And can you detach a little bit from that and actually be open to, well, ultimately what's under that is this, and maybe that can get met from a different means to what I think it's going to look like, and open yourself up to that possibility. That can be really, really helpful as well. And then finally, quite a big thing that has definitely been something that has made a difference in my manifestation practice is the concept of jumping off a cliff. So again, this is something that is taught in TBM. I know I've referenced TBM loads. This is not a sponsored video or anything. I just really, really love the program. They talk about jumping off a cliff, and it's basically taking huge, scary, aligned action. And this is doing something that is like, it's like a big move. Do you know what I mean? It's a really big move that usually comes with overcoming some fear. Usually you have to feel like brave to do it and courageous to do it. And it can be things like, you know, quitting your job to go full-time in your coaching business. It can be like leaving a relationship. It can be like, you know, selling a house without knowing where you're going to move to next. It can, you know, it's something that feels like a kind of leap into the unknown. And what that does when we do that, when we take that big, scary action that we know is aligned, and often what they will say as well is making sure that we are fully resourced to do that as well. So I think that's an important thing. We're not necessarily doing it without knowing that we feel fully resourced and safe to do it in a way, but it still feels like a bit of a leap. Is it creates like a magnetism. It kind of tells the universe that you're not settling anymore. It tells the universe that your self-worth has gone up, and that is when a lot of magical stuff can come through. So that has definitely been my experience, is when I do jump off a cliff, I think it just creates a massive energetic shift. Like I feel completely different when I do something like that. And I do think it just sends a message, you know, that this person, that you've done something and you're not settling for stuff in the same way. You know, you have a different version of yourself when you've actually followed through with that thing. So jumping off a cliff can be a massive part of it. And again, like kind of semi-attached to this concept, and I think this kind of goes into everything that I've talked about, and I talked about this again recently, is a big thing for me has been taking what I call radical personal responsibility for my own shit. I no longer, or at least I really try not to, like blame others, blame other situations, get caught up in like the shit that's going on in the world. Now, again, massive caveat to this. That is not meaning that I'm not aware of what's going on in the world, that I'm not impacted by it in many different ways. Obviously, I'm not impacted in the same way as someone else who might not have the same privileges as me. However, with all of that being said, that shift for me personally, again, all I'm talking about here is my personal experiences, so that maybe you can take some takeaways for yourself, is that when I took like radical personal responsibility for everything in my life, that created a massive shift for me. And again, like all of this stuff kind of ties in, and I think there's a inherent like self-worth thing that happens when you're a bit like, I take full ownership of everything that has happened, that is going to happen. It's like, and it's not that shitty things aren't going to get done to you, that you're not going to be the victim of things getting done to you, but you are always in control of how you respond. You are always the person who has responsibility for how you choose to show up and respond. And like as a result of that, and it is really, really difficult. And even as I say, I'm a bit like, oh, there's so many situations where this is really, really hard for different people who are in different circumstances, and like, oh my God, like, your brain obviously goes to all of the stuff that's going on all over the world that is horrific. And that is something, to be fair, I think there's a part of my spiritual journey that I'm still grappling with, is this kind of element of like the disparity between, some of us who are living like really comfortable lives and those who are not, through no fault of their own whatsoever, just by the look of where we're born or the look of the colour of our skin or whatever. And I'm still really grappling with how all these things that have been really helpful for me personally and that make sense to me on a personal level, I'm still really grappling about how to, and I think this is maybe a big part of generally anything spiritual, religious as well, is like how I kind of like reconcile this stuff. So that's something I'm still working like to try and figure out and reconcile in my own process. But like I say, for me personally, what has been helpful, and I can only really talk for myself, is that taking that full personal responsibility, like radical personal responsibility, has been extremely useful in terms of everything that I do in life, experience in life, etc., and in business, obviously. So yes, that is my experiences with manifestation. And like I say, just to try and recap a little bit, I mentioned some fantastic resources, people to check out at the start. Please do go and check them out. I think everyone resonates with different teachers around this kind of work. So go off and find people that you resonate with and learn from them and learn their processes and things as well. Like I say, for me, it really is rooted in this like authenticity, authentic code, how it is that you want to feel, and, looking to intentionally manifest the things that kind of meet that and make sense for that. It's about looking at your subconscious blocks, doing the mindset work, raising your self-worth, that kind of thing. It's about taking aligned action. There's also another part of TBM, which is around being expanded, which is around actually needing to see it to believe it. So actually being around people who are experiencing the things that you want. That's another part of it that I haven't quite nailed yet, but that's another part of their process. Detaching from the outcome and actually really understanding that it's the feeling rather than the thing that you're going after. And taking that radical personal responsibility, and also being prepared to jump off a cliff when you need to. Those are just steps in the practices that really have helped me. Journaling has been a massive tool, like a really simple tool that I've used alongside the deep imaginings in TBM that have really helped me kind of process some of this work and make some big shifts. So yes, that is a bit about my manifestation journey. I'd love to know if this has been helpful, interesting. I'd love to know if you have any personal recommendations or favourites when it comes to people who talk about manifestation, whether that's on YouTube, drop some links in the comments for people that you love, or let me know on Instagram, tag people, let me know how you enjoy kind of talk about manifestation. I'd really love to know. Also, if you are wanting to be supported in your coaching business from someone who has this kind of like vibe in terms of, if you want to talk about manifestation, if you want to talk about mindset, if you want to talk about subconscious blocks, all of that kind of stuff as it comes to growing your coaching business, then I'm your person, I'm your woman. Do get in touch. I have got a slot available in May, and then I've got some slots available in June, but then I will be closing my books until September. So if you want to work with someone one-to-one around your coaching business, and you want to maybe work with someone who can talk about the manifestation side of things as well, then I am your woman. Do get in touch. All of the information will be in the description. I hope that's been helpful, everybody. And yeah, let me know what you think, and I will catch you next week. Take care. Bye.